Today is December 10th, 2020. This is a remote committee hearing, and it is conducted pursuant to Temporary Senate Rule 12(1)B. The hearing will be facilitated through Zoom. Senator Pratt will be presenting his COVID-19 Economic Business Relief Bill in just a bit, and the language has been provided on the webpage. I want to remind everyone that this is an informational hearing and that no votes will be taken. And before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that today is a very special day for one of our members. I don't see, he is on here. Looks like it's Senator Cohen's birthday. I'm not going to mention his age, but we can save our singing for later. We may just want to reach out and wish Senator Cohen a happy birthday. So,
happy birthday.
Mr. Chairman, thanks a lot, but I didn't receive the gift you were going to send me.
It must have been Senator Pratt that was sending it.
It's in transit with all the rest of my Amazon presents.
Okay, great. I'll look forward to that.
So I think we're ready with that to turn it over to Senator Pratt to present the bill we're talking about today.
Well, thank you, Senator Eichhorn and members and everyone who's been able to join us today. Let me just take a step back and kind of walk through this. This was a bill that we started looking at the day after the governor announced the executive orders back in November. And knowing that this would have a devastating effect on many of our Main Street businesses, our hospitality industry, the fitness industry. I know many of us have breweries, family wineries, and how we could help these small businesses keep plywood off the windows while their doors were locked. And so before I dive into the details of the bill, I want to thank everyone who was involved over the last last week hammering this thing out. Senator Champion was there and a big help. Certainly Commissioner Grove with the governor's office was one of the leads in helping to pull this together. We had Representative Mahoney and Knorr from the House and Representative Baker from the House, all committed to making sure that as many of our businesses impacted by this executive order survived. And this is not about helping them thrive. This is about helping them actually survive and stay open. We spent a lot of time working with stakeholders. We were in contact with Hospitality Minnesota, the Licensed Beverage Association, along with the chambers and other advocacy groups. You'll notice we have some county commissioners on the line and Association of Minnesota Counties. They were extremely important in making sure that we just didn't put money out there, but that we allocated our money in such a way that it was most effective in meeting the true needs that our small businesses were having. So with that, I'll dive just briefly into the program. It took us 8 days to negotiate. I think I'll describe it in 8 minutes. We really went through this and very early on identified the fact that we needed to get these funds out quickly. This is not a long-term grant program. This is an infusion. And so we took it from the approach of fast, faster, and fastest. Our fastest category is really aimed at those industries identified in the executive order that had to lock their doors. Maybe they could do some of our restaurants could do limited takeout and curbside, but for the most part, a huge chunk of their business was hurt. We'll send out $100 million in checks to these folks, really looking at some very basic criteria. Were they in the industry codes that we identified as being directly affected by the executive order? How many employees they have, whether or not they saw a 30% or greater decrease in sales in the second and third quarter year over year, and that they're in good standing with the Department of Revenue. We can get those checks out. We don't have a firm date, but Commissioner Doty and his team have been absolutely terrific in sharing our sense of urgency and hoping that we're talking those checks out in the mail, that we'll be talking about that number in days and not weeks or months. The second is the fast category. Oh, and then, we just took a very simplistic approach. There's 5 groups. Small businesses that we don't have in the unemployment system would get a $10,000 check. Small businesses with up to 20 employers would get $15,000. Businesses with 21 to 100 employees would get a check for $25,000. 101 to 300 would be $35,000, and businesses with over 300 employees would get $45,000. The FAST category is designated to be specifically for large convention centers and movie theaters. $9 million to help our local movie theaters who have really been shut down since March with very little income. Deed was able to share with us that those revenues were down 80 or 90% year over year. And then the convention centers that have had to cancel their events with statewide and regional significance. And then finally, we get to the FAST category. This is a little over $100 million that will be going to the counties to administer. They will be helping those businesses out that didn't qualify for an initial grant. They may also be helping, and that might be because their industry code wasn't one of the ones that we identified. It might be that they had less than a 30% drop in sales, but now they've seen a bigger drop in sales with the latest shutdown. It could be that they weren't directly affected by the executive order, but maybe indirectly affected. One thought here was I might have a cleaning company that cleans restaurants and fitness centers. They weren't necessarily shut down by the executive order, but their clients were shut down. Smaller event centers in our communities, those that didn't meet the initial threshold, we want to be able to do that. And giving the counties as much latitude to design a program to meet their unique needs within their communities. We're not telling them that they have a maximum amount to lend or to grant or a minimum amount to grant. We think that they know their business owners and their business owners' needs better than we do here in St. Paul. Those funds will be distributed at the greater of $17.30 per capita or $200,000. So every county will get a minimum grant of $200,000. With that, that's the gist of the bill that we have in front of us. Mr. Chair, I don't know who's on your list to testify next, and then we can take any questions.
Thanks, Senator Pratt. I have Commissioner Grove first on the testifier list, and then after Commissioner Grove, I have Commissioner Doty.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thanks for having me today. I will be brief. I'm mainly here just to say a word of gratitude to my colleagues in the Senate, Senator Pratt, Senator Champion, our colleagues in the House, Representative Baker, Representative Mahoney, for the hard work on this package. We very much see this as something the state can do to really bridge the gap in funding from now until when federal funding can come. We know things are very challenging today in Minnesota's business climate, given the timing of this spike in the virus. It is truly the most difficult time of the year for businesses in Q4 around the holiday season to have to hold back to keep our hospital capacity where it needs to be and to protect the health of our state. And recognizing that and the budget surplus that we were fortunate to see happen in this state this year, moving with some state funding here, we think will be really powerful. It is somewhat unprecedented to have the Department of Revenue to directly issue payments in this way. But again, to Senator Pratt's point, after countless conversations with industry stakeholders across the state, this idea of speed really was top of mind. What the stakeholders told us was, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Construct the best program that you can with the levers that you have and move quickly. And so it is very much our goal to do that. We know this money is desperately needed. I will say that we are very adamant that a UI bill pass as well. That's at the top of our discussion today, but we do want to make sure that workers are taken care of in this package on Monday too, as a separate discussion. But we fear that over 100,000 workers by the end of this month will be without unemployment insurance payments unless we act to help them, because the federal government has not done that yet. So a lot to contemplate here, but we are excited about this tentative agreement for businesses, grateful to our partnership across party lines on this, and looking forward to seeing this come forward next Monday. So thanks very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the time to chat.
Thank you, Commissioner Grove, and we've only got a handful of testifiers, so we'll save questions for the end. I've got Commissioner Dottie up next, and then Liz Reimer from Hospitality, Minnesota after the commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. By the way, it's Doty, just so
Doty,
going forward.
I've got a local constituent whose name is spelled the last way, same exact way as yours, but they go by Dottie. So sorry.
No problem. I just throw it out there. So first of all, thank you very much for allowing me just to take a couple seconds here, and I want to just first echo the same thing that Commissioner Grove did. I want to definitely say a big thanks to Senator Pratt and others on this from this committee, looking at how we can work together on this. This really is an important endeavor. I think last night Senator Pratt said something that stuck with me, which was the whole idea of this is really about helping our neighbors and how important that is. And so I really appreciate that. And I do believe that that Minnesotans will appreciate this as well. Again, this will not be perfect. There's a lot of room for mistakes to happen. We are, as Commissioner Grove mentioned, the Department of Revenue, this is not our wheelhouse necessarily of doing these kind of direct payments. And so we're doing the best we can, and we will. The one thing I would just correct Senator Pratt, what he said early on was that we're looking to get these out in days versus weeks or whatever. I was very careful not to specifically say days, and I want to keep saying that. This is going to take us at least a couple weeks to get these out. So I just want to say that and kind of tamper down the enthusiasm to get these out as quickly as possible. We will work as quickly as possible, but I don't want to be lynched when I get back to the office from my team about you said days. And so I want to be clear. So again, but in all honesty though, thank you all very much. Really appreciate that. And we look forward to being a part of this really important endeavor.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have Liz from Hospitality, Minnesota, then Matt Hilgert from the Minnesota counties. So go ahead, Liz, as soon as you're ready.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair. We really appreciate your leadership, and to all of you working in a bipartisan manner to provide emergency relief for the hospitality industry here in Minnesota. It's really a dire situation, as you have heard. And the industry here is a key economic driver for our state, and it's really been unprecedented in this year with all of the closures that have confronted our businesses. And our operators and our employee teams have really been decimated during this time. And the industry is, as I said, a key economic driver, 1 in 10 good paying Minnesota jobs. And that in normal times is 300,000 jobs. And as we know from Indeed, we've already lost 80,000 jobs. And our projection is if things continue, we're on the path to lose another 70,000 jobs without financial assistance in a significant manner coming in very quickly. So while the current executive order closed indoor dining and limited travel, as you heard from Commissioner Grove, coming at the worst possible time, this is the time of year when operators are looking to generate up to 40% of their annual revenues. And so this holiday season being closed and having their workers out of a job is really calamitous. And they're seeing the bills pile up for the many obligations that continue. And as I noted, This is truly an ecosystem. There are many complex, it's really a complex web with interdependencies with multiple jobs spurring from these core hospitality jobs. And as we think about the future and what our data shows, we see that over 50% of restaurants face permanent closure, 30% of hotels and 33% of hospitality firms face permanent closure without additional help here. 600 of Minnesota's 1,000 hotels are also facing foreclosure in the next 6 months. 85% of restaurants expect sales are going to decrease to levels in the next 3 months. And 63% of restaurants expect their staffing levels to decline in the next 3 months. So it really is a time for emergency action. And we're very grateful, as I stated, for all of you, negotiating team and all of the staff in supporting this process to bring this relief plan forward. It's really critical. So the case is clear, and we really have an opportunity here to provide that lifeline to these operators and give them some financial relief until more assistance can come from the federal government. And in recent weeks, Hospitality Minnesota has really been advocating for the state to provide this relief for these distressed businesses through the creation of the direct grant programs, deed loans, expansion of the deed program, sales tax relief, property tax relief, regulatory relief, really all kinds of opportunities to pull tools out of the toolkit that can help create cash flow and extend the life of these businesses until more assistance can be available. Certainly other aspects of this that include the food donation, alcohol to go, all of these things can come to bear to help these businesses survive to the other side of the crisis. So Hospitality Minnesota is very supportive of these efforts and supports the $215 million grant proposal that's been put forward today. We do understand that there's some limitations with the state's ability to provide some of the financial aid, which of course is crucial, and to really capture all of the businesses that are very deserving of this financial assistance right now. So we look to you and ask for your commitment in working to ensure that those who don't receive this immediate direct payment right away from the Department of Revenue, due to the fact that they may have multiple locations and less ability to get that immediate relief, that we really look quickly to those county-based relief programs to assist. And we really want to speak with each of you about how we might be able to help in that effort. We're certainly concerned about the distressed lodging properties that may not see those initial payments coming through the Department of Revenue. And again, we know that they would be eligible for the county-based aid program. And we know, again, that there's a dire need for many of these operators that I'd mentioned earlier, that they get also access to this and receive your help and partnership and communicating with the counties to make sure that they are really at the top of the list to be able to be receiving this much needed relief. And also understanding there's a few more limitations to the state's ability to track employees aligned with the different restaurant locations. And so under this framework, we know that some of the operators that have these multiple locations may actually receive less per location than they might have otherwise. And so again, with the situation with the individual EIN numbers, we understand that there's a challenge there, but if, again, there's a goal of the program to allow these operators to receive additional relief from their counties, we would just ask, again, that they would be given heightened consideration in this process. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, committee. We appreciate your assistance and let us know how we can be helpful in the process going forward.
Thank you for your testimony. I have Matt Hilgart up next, and then Kyle O'Dare from Rock County.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Good to be with you here today. First of all, thank you, Senator Pratt, Senator Champions, their staff, and Commissioners Grove and Doty. We really appreciate all your work on this. It's not easy to negotiate a multi-$100 million relief package, especially when we're doing it remotely, but what unites us all is the need to do something and to do something now. County commissioners across the state are seeing firsthand, as Liz pointed out, the impacts their residents, their business owners, and homeowners are witnessing as the COVID pandemic is continuing into 2021. And we share your goals of providing relief to Minnesotans during this time of need. Members may be fairly asking right now, why are counties on this call or in this bill? And that is a very good question. I suspect one of the reasons that the legislature approached us this past few weeks is that they saw the success that we had in administering the Federal CARES Act dollars especially in regards to the relief funds on business and nonprofit assistance. Through hard work, collaboration, and creativity, counties work to provide food, mortgage, rental support, along with creating business and nonprofit assistance programs from scratch and operating emergency shelter operations. This is all, of course, on top of the local public health efforts that we have been doing. From a survey that we just started this week, 53 counties responded saying that they had dispersed over $163 million externally into their communities. Specifically, these 53 counties provided more than 8,000 grants to nonprofits and for-profit businesses. This aid, and thank you to the Senate, Senator Rosen and others and the House for getting these funds out in July, has been a lifeline to our businesses, our homeowners, renters, and those in need. And we are, as counties, ready to help out again. As Senator Pratt and others started reaching out to us this week, working towards a three-tiered structure of business relief that had a local level of discretion and assistance, AMC underscored the following two tenets for any successful county-administered program. First and foremost, we've underscored the need for the program to be flexible, and this is really to meet the core unique needs of our diverse state. That means no minimum or maximum grant amounts, flexibility in structuring who can apply, as well as documentation requirements, an ability to help provide additional relief to entities that may have already received funds, and flexibility on timeline and administration timelines. The second thing that we underscored was a meaningful amount of dollars. So we had mentioned to Senator Pratt that splitting 30 million or 40 million across 87 counties might result in a menial amount of funds that wouldn't actually be able to do good for what the program has been created for. I want to pause there and just thank Senator Pratt and his staff and others in the House who have been working so hard to meet many of these requests and make sure that whatever program comes out is as effective as it can be. Because really what you're asking counties is to be the catch-all, the shortstop, the folks who are going to be creative and trying to address the needs that Liz just eloquently stated in the previous testimony. At first glance, and I just want to stress, this is my only first take. I had to watch the House Ways and Means hearing, but I did get to read the bill a couple times, and I have a few pieces of feedback, if that's okay with you. On lines 4.30 to 4.31, it says, we're in good standing with the Department of Revenue as of November 1st, 2020. Counties just want to make sure, what does that mean? Let's be clear about that. And who's communicating with us on that element? Is it going to be the businesses? Are they going to have to prove that? Will the state agencies get in touch with us to make sure? We just want that to be clear and not cause any timeline delays to getting these funds out. I want to say thank you very much for lines 5.1 to 5.2. It says counties can decide their business grants based on who were directly or indirectly impacted by the EO. We think there's going to be a lot of gray area on folks coming to us for assistance. And we are fine operating in that gray, but we need flexibility. And so we really appreciate that strong language. It wasn't included in the House's original draft, but we think that is very good. I'm a little concerned about lines 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5, and I believe that Liz mentioned something to this as well. And it's really that it says a county shall determine grant recipients and the grant amount awarded per grant. A county may award a grant to a business affected by the EO that did not receive a grant under section 1 or 2. I just asked that I believe the intent in our conversations were counties having the ability to provide additional grants for folks who might have already received a Department of Revenue grant. The example is a restaurant who had to shut down, lost their kegs, lost their food. $10,000 might be nice from the state, but really what they need is $25,000. And we want Rock County to have the ability to meet their residents where their needs are and to amplify the cash assistance for those folks to stay open and keep local folks employed. The other thing in that paragraph is just to be, once you starting to become prescriptive over nonprofits, what kind of nonprofits are applicable? Our counties are going to be risk averse, and they're only going to think in context of the nonprofits that you spelled out. So we think that it should, lines 5.1 to 5.2 are great, and that 5.7 to 5.10 are not necessarily needed. The last thing I'll mention is the auditing and reporting paragraph. That's kind of 5.16 to 5.21. We are interested in kind of what it means when it says the Commissioner of Deed shall audit the use of the funds under the section in accordance with standard accounting practices. Again, is it going to be clear on what counties are expected to do on the front end? I know that speed was one of the things that Senator Pratt has really wanted from us all, and we are going to be encouraging our members to get that out the door, but we are also going to have to cover our bases for any kind of audit. The House, we preferred their language, which was more of a report by the commissioners of deed and DOR to say how the money was spent. We think that this would facilitate a faster spending by county to get things out. And the last thing I would suggest is just, and I've spoken to Commissioner Doty about this as well, is the ability for counties to know which folks DOR issued their checks to and how much. That will help us get our process started on which folks in our communities didn't receive funds, and we can directly reach out to them and get them funds potentially much quicker than having to have an application period, which might last a month or two for transparency's sake. So we think that data sharing is critical to counties being creative with their programs and helping those most in need. And I will end, Senator Pratt. I know that was a lot. I apologize, but I want to end just by saying thank you. This has been a lot of hours, and I know because I've been the recipient of some of your calls later at night, and I know that your night ends even later than mine. So I appreciate all the work that your team has put into this. It's been bipartisan work, and we stand with you and ready to be of assistance however counties can be. So thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Pratt?
Yeah, and just to Mr. Hilgert's comments, before we get the county commissioner on, we do have a difference in language right now. We wrapped this up very late last night, and so we'll be working to align the House and the Senate language as we go forward. Mr. Hilgert is right. We did talk about allowing businesses that did receive a grant through the DOR to get additional funds based on number of locations, because we had to do it on a per owner basis through the Department of Revenue. So all that will be worked out in the coming days so that we have common language going in on Monday.
All right, thanks, Senator Pratt. Last up, we have Kyle Oldair from Rock County. And then after that, members, if you got questions, if you want to use the raise hand button to get in line, we'll go to that as soon as the commissioner's done.
Mr. Chair and Senators, thank you so very much for allowing me some time this afternoon. Matt really stole almost all my thunder. I don't have a lot to add, to be honest with you, and that's probably a good thing. What I will relay though is a desire for you to trust us. Let counties do what we're really good at. We're consider us your boots on the ground. We can identify those second and third order effects, those areas that aren't going to specifically be identified by the state. Let us get the helping hand out to those folks, and we will meet your speed requirement or exceed your speed requirement in every case. Our county, for example, we're a small county. We're a $200,000 recipient. I'm grateful, very grateful, but those dollars will be out the door within 30 days to 45 days tops. And they'll be working and they'll be helping Minnesotans. And that's what we're all about. And I just want to tell you, it's hard to express over a video call how grateful I truly am to see the Senate and House come together like this and recognize the need that's out there in an incredibly short timeline that you've accomplished it. I'm grateful. I've sat in this chair in the county for a long, long time, and it's a pleasure to watch how this has come together, and you're helping the Minnesotans out there. So if I can be of any assistance, I certainly would like to do that. Senator Pratt, I appreciate having a chance to visit with you yesterday, and the work you've done is phenomenal. Thank you so very much. Senators, I stand for any questions if you have any for me, and I'll be quiet.
Well, thank you very much. And I will say that, in working with my counties as well, the counties have been great partners with the state through COVID in general. So we appreciate the partnerships you guys have there. First on the list, I have Senator Cohen and then Senator Housley.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I would echo some of the comments that, I know Senator Pratt and others have worked, Senator Champion have worked very hard on this. And it meets a significant need. I mean, the significant negative is it's too bad as a state government, we don't have access to more money. We're not the federal government. But let me raise a couple of concerns, maybe a smaller concern and then a larger concern, if I might. In the second section, relief grants to convention centers, movie theaters. Now, there's probably nobody in the Senate who utilizes movie theaters more than me. Having said that, in terms of ownership, is there a distinction between the large theater chains and the independent theaters? For instance, if you look at the theaters in my district, the Highland Theater and the Grandview Theater, each of which have 2 screens, those are independent theaters owned by, it's a Minnesota business. The Riverview in South Minneapolis is a single screen. But the AMC in Roseville, which probably has somewhere 15 to 18 screens, that's a national chain. So my question relative to that is, does that money go to the national chain for use as they might determine, as opposed to being of help to Minnesotans who are out of work because of COVID?
Senator Pratt.
Thank you. And Senator Cohen, I'll defer to Commissioner Grove on this one. He's worked more closely with the movie theaters.
Commissioner Grove.
Sorry, I was having trouble getting off mute. Mr. Chair, Senator Cohen, great question. The question in many ways applies to any sort of franchise business. Think of your McDonald's or your Burger Kings or your Red Robins or others who have national franchises but local ownership. The goal here is to help local ownership. And so, you take a look at somebody like Steve Mann, who owns Mann Theaters. We want to help those theaters survive this time. We want to help local arts organizations, which you've been a champion of for your entire career, succeed through money in that county bucket. The goal is to help local Minnesotans who've taken the risk to create jobs in our state and supply them with the funding they need to try to get through this really difficult time. So we're not writing checks to Los Angeles, we're writing checks to Minnesotans. And that's why having a location in the county is critical, such that we're making sure that Minnesota business owners and Minnesota entrepreneurs benefit from these funds.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, Commissioner, again, my example of the AMC in Roseville. So obviously that's in Roseville, Minnesota, and employs Minnesotans. So does the check for $150,000 go to a Minnesota subsidiary of National AMC?
It is this is why for this particular program, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Senator Cohen, that is why this particular program is being run through a grant program at Deed, so we can make evaluations on that. I don't know enough about the specific Roseville theater you're speaking to walk through that individual use case, but we felt this is one where having our Deed team take a look at the individual dynamics of each of these theater groups to ensure the money goes to Minnesotans is the intent of the program. And whereas the revenue component of this, the Department of Revenue component, is a direct payment, which we think we can make based on the nature of those industries that are highlighted in that section. Convention centers and movie theaters have some complexities to them. And frankly, their financial model is different enough from just a pure sales tax model. You got property tax issues, et cetera, that require further analysis. And so that is the intent, is to pay Minnesotans on this and help make sure that they can keep their doors open and get through this time.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Cohen.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could go on, if that's okay.
Yeah, feel free. Senator Cohen.
Let me go to the third section where I do have some. So I appreciate Commissioner Grove's comments and just a reference to the particular theater in Roseville. It's the AMC theater, which again has 15, 18, 20 screens, and so it's a large movie house. But you've suggested that because this is going to be under the jurisdiction of your agency, that there'll be some control over where that money goes to make sure it goes to Minnesotans. Let me raise a different concern, though, in Section 3. And I talked originally to Senator Pratt about a couple of my concerns. We haven't talked since. So listening to the Commissioner Oldry and Mr. Hilgard, I have no doubt that of 87 counties in Minnesota, 82 counties or thereabouts, some very large percentage will handle this in a responsible way. And I do like the fact that there are businesses that fall out of the category of, say, the restaurants, bars, which are significantly impacted. As a quick example, I've had conversations with the owner of the dry cleaners I use, and that's an independent operation. And he has said his business has been clobbered by this. The business model has changed. He doesn't have as many people coming in, with business attire to be dry cleaned. And so I'm glad that there might be some opportunity through the Ramsey County Board to help out a business like that. What I'm concerned about is in terms of the county grants, is anything open? And I'm not quite sure, maybe either the commissioner or council, Mr. Doyle Fontaine, can help me in terms of the executive order as to what's eligible or not. But why wouldn't a nonprofit political advocacy group be appropriate for money? And having said I trust most of the counties, I'll tell you a couple of counties I don't trust in that regard. That would be Hennepin and Ramsey County, just to name two. Would you stand, would there be the opportunity for grants to those kinds of organizations? And again, I'm not totally familiar with the definition of the executive order, so let me start with that.
Commissioner?
Mr. Chair, Senator Cohen, the county bucket, to the points that Mr. Hilgard made, is designed to be as flexible as possible to ensure that businesses either affected directly or indirectly by Executive Order 2099 are eligible, and that does include nonprofit organizations. We want to get that maximum flexibility for counties to target the funding directly. The kinds of nonprofits and arts and culture institutions that we discussed in these negotiations are such things as independent music venues or museums or YMCAs or YWCAs, where the sales tax revenue from their sales can't be measured in the way that the Department of Revenue could administer those grants, again, directly as payments. So that is the intent of including nonprofits as an available, an allowable recipient of grants for that county bucket, and the flexibility there for counties to make the decision of what makes the most sense in their county based on local knowledge is the intent of the language.
So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner or Senator Pratt, let me ask the question. Let me just give you a couple of examples. Take Action Minnesota. Are they eligible for a grant if the Ramsey County Board decides they've been impacted by COVID and they should get a grant? I don't know if there is a local office for the National Rifle Association, but if they're in a particular county, should that county give them a grant? Because it seems to me those aren't the kinds of organizations where there's an intent to provide this kind of help. And I'm fearful of counties, give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and end up utilizing this money for things that are far beyond the scope of what's intended. As I mentioned, I would trust just about any county in the state, but I think there are a handful that might take advantage of this for political purposes. So is there any protection against that?
Senator Pratt?
Senator Cohen, if you look at lines 5.7 through 5.10, that's where we're trying to define those as nonprofits that earn revenue similar to businesses, including but not limited to ticket sales, membership fees, that had to cease operations due to Executive Order 2099. The folks that you mentioned, in my mind, would not qualify under that criteria because they do not have revenue similar to businesses that are covered above, and their operations were not forced to cease due to the executive order.
So, Mr. Chairman and Senator Pratt, I have no doubt whatsoever that what you say is correct in terms of what your intent, but as we know from having been around the legislature for a number of years, once we're gone, who knows? Maybe I could direct my question to Ms. Doyle Fontaine if she's here somewhere on the screen somewhere. Well, there she is. Okay, so it was a lot tougher than in committee when you can just look down the row of the committee and there she is. So Ms. Doyle Fontaine, let's use my example of political advocacy groups. Would they be absolutely prohibited from a county giving them a grant? They're nonprofits. Can they make an argument they were impacted by COVID? I don't know, maybe.
Mr. Chair and Senator Cohen, I think that what Senator Pratt said with regard to this package seems to be very targeted to being impacted by EO 2099 directly or indirectly. And I think what you've been saying is by COVID. And I think there's a bit of a distinction there in all of the drafting. It really doesn't even, I don't know if it might mention COVID a few times, but it's mostly about EO 2099. There were a few discussions about political organizations. They're not mentioned, but that sentence also that Senator Pratt mentioned about nonprofits and ticket sales and memberships that had to cease operations due to Executive Order 2099, I think speaks to the types of organizations that were contemplated. I would also say in regard to what Mr. Hilgert said about the auditing function, I think the county's knowing, if this is the intent of the legislation, that it should not be going to political organizations, that an audit feature and some deed oversight would be a message to the counties that that's really not contemplated and the door is not wide open to political organizations. So that's what I would say about how it's drafted and some of the oversight and whatever the legislative intent is as this moves forward.
So, Mr. Chairman, and I should let others get in, but so, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Doyle-Fontaine, at the risk of cross-examining, is there an absolute prohibition? Again, I can't presume to know the detail of the executive order and what kind of constraints that places on a county. But is there an absolute prohibition relative to my hypothetical? An absolute prohibition. I understand what you're saying about the oversight of deed, which obviously I trust, and the oversight of the state legislature. But once the money's out the door, it's out the door. So is there an absolute prohibition, given the definition of the executive order, with my hypothetical?
Ms. Fontaine?
Mr. Chair and Senator Cohen, there is not an absolute prohibition, but given the things I mentioned before and this discussion, it is contemplated. However, if you would like that language included and the rest of the legislature would like that included, then that language could be offered as an amendment or agreed upon by everyone if that is the intent and the will of the committee and the bodies.
So, Mr. Chairman, let me just leave it at this, and then let others jump in.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I do not know to the specifics of EO 2099 if it mentions anything about political organizations or activities. So I cannot speak to that executive order on that. I just wanted to add that.
So, Mr. Chairman, let me just make one other comment. So, Council, you indicated that you can do this by amendment. I can't do it by amendment. What we know is once we get into session Monday, there are no amendments. And I forget. I think Senator Rarick is on this call. I think it was Senator Rarick or I believe who made a comment at one of the special sessions about what happened to conference committees and whatever. And I wanted staff to say, yeah, you're right, exactly. So we know that once some resolution's been achieved, then it's untouchable. So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Pratt, if I've raised a concern that is not absolutely addressed, I hope that you'll add language to this draft that will make sure that this is going to the folks, both profit and nonprofit, that have been impacted in a way of detriment. And hope you'll consider doing something to tighten the language.
Senator Cohen, also Mr. Hilgart from the counties might be able to add some context for you on your question there as well. So I'm going to give the floor to him for a second to see if he can help add some context to your question. Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Senator Eichhorn and Senator Cohen. I'm trying to jot down notes as you're speaking too, because we obviously don't want the intent to be what you're saying. And at the same time, our members are telling us, if you expect us to get a program out in this short amount of time to do the most good and be the most impactful we can be, you need to trust us to structure our programs. And so I want to write something that is helpful to what you're wanting. At the same time, I don't want us getting into a prescriptive list where the counties want to give money to, wedding facilities, photographers, chiropractics, nail salons, therapists, folks who aren't going to be on Commissioner Grove or Commissioner Doty's list. And they're going to want flexibility to hit those businesses. So I know we're kind of battling between guidelines and uniformity versus flexibility, customization, and I think impactfulness. And those are the two things that as you as legislators are having to debate.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Chairman, I'll let some others jump in and maybe come back.
All right, I have Senator Housley up next.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Pratt, for all of the work that you and the staff have done. I know you've been working around the clock, and this is a pretty good bill in such a short amount of time. So thank you. There are so many businesses out there that are hurting, and I know I'm not the only one who are getting emails and texts and Facebook messages and phone calls of we need help, please, please, please. Their businesses are hanging on by a thread, so any little bit that we can give them to help them out is huge. So thank you for putting this together and getting all the stakeholders on board. This is really good. Just to Senator Cohen's point too, which by the way, Senator Cohen, I didn't know you were such a moviegoer. A happy birthday, and I hope you get to see something tonight in the theater that's not yet open. But anyway, to that, the nonprofits, I don't know if there needs to be clarification there or not, because I agree that there should be some sort of oversight, but give counties the flexibility. But in that nonprofit, we've got chambers of commerce throughout the state. Each little community has their own chamber, and they've really been hurt with less than half their membership fees, and they're not able to have any events to get money. They had ticket sales. Would they be included, or are we going to let the counties decide that on their own? And I don't know if that goes to maybe that's Matt or Commissioner Grove.
See Matt unmuted. Do you want to touch on that first, and then if Commissioner Grove wants to add on to, he's certainly welcome to.
Senator Eichhorn and Senator Housley, the way that I read the Senate's language right now, that would be a county by county decision based on the impact of COVID. But what's nice about that too, Senator Housley, is rather than being prescriptive and potentially having counties just give standard uniform checks of $5,000 to each nonprofit that may or may not be helpful, the local counties would be able to determine impact, their need, and maybe even customize the amount of level of support to each of those nonprofits, depending on if the Anoka Chamber was less hurt than, let's say, the Red Lake County Chamber was hurt. So I think you're going to see a different level of customization across the state.
Great, thank you.
I would say, Senator Housley, that and this is the position that I come from, and we can continue to clarify it, but we do want that. We would not be here talking about this business relief program if it weren't for Executive Order 2099. And so as much as we can, I'd like to keep the focus on that executive order, but understanding there are businesses not directly impacted by or identified within the executive order that have been impacted, as you said. If there's a cleaning company that's cleaning the local restaurants or fitness center, they have been impacted. If we have a trucking company that has to bring supplies or inventory to a business, let's say an event center, they have been directly impacted. So those are why we were a little bit vague in the description and allowing the counties to kind of determine how well they fit that description. But I've had the same conversation with my chambers of commerce as well. Again, the focus of this package is to keep plywood out of the windows and keep these businesses from going dark forever, rather than helping them make up losses.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Housley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To that point, and when Senator Cohen was saying, not having it go to political organizations, there are some chambers throughout the state that have PACs or lobbyists. Wondering if that in the criteria, or again, do we just leave that to the counties to decide, and they can decide if they want to give it to a chamber that has a PAC or a lobbyist? Just curious, just throwing it out there. Come on, man.
That was my question. Senator Housley, that was my question too. Senator Eichhorn or Chair Eichhorn, Senator Housley. My question when Senator Cohen was going over kind of his concerns was how would counties in there trying to get this out to folks as quickly as possible, how are they going to assess what's political and what's not political? And is there a clear list of that? Does DEED have that list? Does DOR have that list? I don't know that anyone has that list. So I think it would be complicated.
Thank you. Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Housley.
Chair.
All right, I have Senator Drayheim up next.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Senator Pratt and everybody else that worked on this bill. It's much needed, so I do appreciate it. I had a couple questions. One on line 1.19, physical presence. I don't know if council or someone can, what is that defined as?
Ms. Fontaine? You're on mute still, Ms.
Yes,
Fontaine.
I know. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair and Senator Drayheim. Physical presence, in this sense, it really, I believe the intent of this language was more of a bricks and mortar presence in the state of Minnesota. In the previous business grants program we had, it was similar language where you needed to have a physical presence and have more of a bricks and mortar type of situation. Down in the county program, it says must be located in the county, applicable county, which gives it a little more flexibility as far as if a business is coming in to conduct services in the county, maybe they're located in a different county. That I believe that was what was part of the negotiation. If someone else could correct me if I'm wrong on that as far as physical presence.
Senator Drayheim, in my mind, this goes directly to the executive order where certain places of public accommodation are closed to members of the public. And that's where we list out the restaurants, food courts, cafes, fitness centers, the whole bit. And to make sure that since it's these brick and mortar businesses that have been most impacted, that the checks that go out from the Department of Revenue go to those brick and mortar businesses first. The cleaning company that maybe runs 2 vans and doesn't have a specific office space is probably a better example of a company that would go through the county versus say your restaurant or your local gym or any of the other local businesses that have been hurt. Another one we contemplated was VFWs and Legions. They're coded as nonprofits on the Department of Revenue's sheet, but we know that they have restaurants and bars that have been gravely impacted, and they would certainly qualify under the county programs as well. So really focusing on those brick and mortar businesses for the fastest process. And then just to say that the 30% drop in sales was meant to exclude maybe some of the fast food franchisees who aren't seeing the same type of impact as our sit down and limited order or limited service restaurants.
Thank you. And if I could follow up, Chair.
Yep. Go ahead, Senator Drayheim.
Thank you. So, and then my next question has to do with the event or the centers. I call them convention center, I guess is what the word's used here. Is there a definition in the capacity that is used here?
Mr. Chair, Senator Drayheim, I heard there was a concern about the terminology of capacity, and there is not a definition in this language. But when I look out at, when I think about capacity, it's not necessarily how many seats there are like in a convention center, but I would think of it more as a fire marshal what the code, what they would allow for maximum occupancy. And that if that needs to get clarified, we can certainly do that. But the 1,500 capacity, so for example, in some of the executive orders, like a restaurant can only operate at 50% capacity. The way that that was calculated, as far as I know, under some of the EO limitations, was using the fire marshal, the fire code occupancy load. So for right now, I would say that that's kind of what the capacity is in my mind. I can certainly put that in. We can add that language. And I don't know if revenue or deed had a different idea about that, but that was just what I was thinking for now. And they kind of came to us with the 1,500 capacity. And so maybe they have more information about that.
Well, that would be helpful, because I don't know, I assumed it was the fire code on that, but, and then my
Senator Drayheim,
last comment,
if Commissioner Grove might be able to answer that. He unmuted and raised his hand quick, so he might be able to touch on exactly what you were just asking, Ms. Fontaine.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Senator Drayheim, it's a great question. The 1,500 is the number of seats that a convention center can hold, right? The number of folks that can come in and engage. And, we think that there's around 10 in the state that meet that 1,500 and above cutoff. The thought here is that these convention centers, they are big regional economic development drivers, and the state can reasonably issue a program to that end. There are a lot of event centers and venues that also need help. We know that, and we know the counties will spend a lot of their money on those venues. But for these big kind of statewide venues, many in greater Minnesota, many in the metro, we think that DEED can do a quick and efficient program to get money to them. And we know kind of the outsized impact they play in the regional economy of those areas. So that was a reason that the legislature and the governor agreed to do that. But we know there are convention centers who don't meet that threshold, who can get money through the counties. And the same goes for other types of venues.
Senator Drayheim.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Chair and Commissioner. I guess my point being that I own a convention center, or event center, as I call it, and we have 1,000 people. And, for the community that it's located in, it's a huge economic driver. And it's all relative, so you're drafting the bill to help out the metropolitan areas and not the rural areas. So I have a real problem with that, and I've discussed that with the author. And my other big problem with the bill is the hotels, lack of help from hotels. And some of the hotel owners in my district have contacted me, and their capacity is wide open. Some nights they're getting 1 or 2 people. And let's see which Hospitality Minnesota, one of the handouts that we were given this afternoon right before the hearing, it says 600 of the Minnesota's 1,000 hotels will face foreclosure in the next 6 months. And there's absolutely nothing in here for them. I have a large building. They have a large building. It's, my overheads, fixed overheads over 10 grand a month. And I've been shut down for at least 6 months this year, and effectively shut down the rest of the 3 months, I guess, since COVID came, with the limited capacity. And it's just frustrating that, we're carved out of a bill. That does help a lot of people. I get that. And I know we have that section 3 in this bill that goes to the counties. And, my issue there is that I don't think the counties have the personnel or the application that I have seen in a couple different counties that I operate in, different businesses. The applications are real simple, which I like, but if you're trying to be equitable on handing out grants, if you have a very small coffee shop, was an example that we used earlier, compared to a hotel or an event center. In my case, you have the same application. There's no way for that county to know what your economic impact is. So I do think there needs to be more guide rails on the county portion, and maybe we could hear from one of the county people on their thoughts on that. And I know they want the flexibility, and I can appreciate the flexibility, but maybe at least if there was an application requirement, overhead, what property taxes or rent paid, utilities paid, whatever, to give the people at the county an idea of what the base need is. And if they've been shut down 100% or just limited in capacity. Thank you.
Mr. Hilgart from the counties, do you want to respond?
Sure, and then I think Kyle might have some insight too, because he's operated a program himself. But I would say to Senator Drayheim, I'm sorry if that was not your experience in the first round of the CARES funding, which counties administered. I think you have 3 counties that you have in your jurisdiction. I do know several counties that use the impact-based decision. So they asked for loss, they asked for impact, they asked if your entity had received other funds, either state or federal assistance. They set up commissions with city council members and economic developers and even business communities that were involved in helping vet some of these application periods. But I also know that some counties and elected county commissioners prioritize speed. And when they saw that on an application, they had set aside $5 million and they had way above the amount of applications that they were expecting, they said, rather than disappointing folks and giving less, we think the equity is important. So I'm not disagreeing with anything that you're saying. I'm just saying that what we kind of witnessed through CARES, I suspect that is kind of how you will see a layered approach throughout the state again. And Kyle, did you want to mention anything on kind of how you ran your program?
Mr. Chair and Senators, certainly Matt's hit it right on the head. We had about $1.1 million initially given to us back in July, and we put 800,000 of it in businesses. We had 160 grants that we did $5,000 grants because it was a matter of the demand versus the supply. If you run ag programs, once the money runs out, the money runs out. We saw a lot of metro counties were able to do $10,000 and $15,000 grants. I don't know if they were putting some county dollars in or how they did that. But we went with trying to get dollars to as many folks as we could. I know the city of Laverne used their dollars in a similar manner but they did it with utility relief. So it was, I certainly feel what you're saying, Senator. And as a matter of fact, doing the stubby math while you were talking, we have a convention center in Laverne that seats about 600. If you do 500,000 to a 1,500 seat, that's $333 per chair. If we did the equivalent in Rock County, that'd be 199,000. My grant's 200,000. So they would be the only recipient locally. It makes it virtually impossible to do it. I feel what you're saying, Senator, but I also recognize that you've had a tremendous task with trying to figure out a way how to get these dollars out to us. I apologize if I didn't answer the question. All I can say is I certainly feel what you're saying, and I wish I had a better answer.
Senator Drayheim?
No, I appreciate the response, and I know we can't please everybody. I'm more worried about the hotels than I am my own business. I having a kid in hockey and traveling throughout the whole state, from Laverne to Thief River Falls to Rochester to wherever, getting rooms for a hockey tournament sometimes a challenge. And I do think it's an economic engine for the local communities that these hotels are. And I just think we're being a little short-sighted by not trying to give them some relief. So thank you.
Thanks, Senator Drayheim. I have Senator Goggin up next.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, thank you. I want to go back to the nonprofits because I received an email from my local YMCA regarding the fact that they had a child that tested positive for COVID, so then they were shut down for 2 weeks. Would that qualify them to apply for grants under this legislation?
Was that to Senator Pratt
Anybody who could answer that?
or was that to council?
To Senator Pratt or Ms. Fontaine. I'm just trying to get an idea if they could say that, you know, because they're helping out the frontline workers with the clinic and all that, and you know, can they get help with those 2 weeks that they were forced to be shut down?
So Senator Goggin, if I recall correctly, we have through the CARES money funds going to child care centers like you described already. This was meant for really those portions of the business of the Y, mainly the fitness center, that had to shut down and isn't being subsidized by existing funding. So it's hard. It's kind of hard to say when you're talking about a Y who runs so many programs within one building. And, you know, that's where I think the counties would have to look and say, has this been impacted by the latest executive order?
Okay, thank you.
Any additional, Senator Goggin?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Yep. Senator Isaacson?
Thank you. Again, I apologize. I have a double booked at 3 o'clock, and so I want to get back. And if you covered this, I'm really sorry about that. If you could just give me a quick answer. But when we did the last one, you and Senator Anderson put out with $62 million. Obviously, that was a limited amount of money. And I'm just wondering, when you are thinking about like how we arrived at the 102 million, I think that's what I read in the bill. Do we have a sense of how much it would take? Like, and this may be just an astronomical number, if we were to really double down on keeping as many people whole as possible, or trying to provide as small of a negative impact as possible by providing more money, if we were to do that, just as a sense, like, how did you come up with 102? You know, is it just like you could never do enough money if you really wanted to make all these businesses whole? If we wanted to, like, we wanted to include what Senator Drayheim was talking about, do we have a ceiling on like what that would look like? Did anybody run some numbers on that just to get an idea of what it would take to keep as many of the businesses whole as possible? Because I assume that 102 will run out before March, and that there will still be businesses that need it. And I know a couple of the businesses that I knew that needed it didn't get it this last time. And so I'm just wondering what that looks like and what that top looks like if we were to, you know, hypothetically examine that. Do we have an answer for that?
Senator Pratt?
This might be a better question for Commissioner Grove, since I know he's got the data on number of businesses impacted by directly impacted by Executive Order 2099 in each county. But let me take just maybe a little bit. Let me take a high level approach to this, and then maybe let the commissioner fill in the gaps or correct my errors. The idea, Sarah Isaacson, is that we would try to catch as many of those businesses through the Department of Revenue process. Mm-hmm. Get those checks out to the restaurants and fitness centers and dance studios and, you know, all these people that have directly been shut down. You know, we're hoping that we kind of hit that spot. We've talked to Hospitality Minnesota. Certainly they would have liked to have seen bigger checks go out. Sure. And even though we have a $640 million surplus this biennium, we know that every dollar we're spending potentially adds $1 of deficit to the $1.2 billion deficit we're facing next budget cycle, which will start to have a real impact on healthcare. And Senator Housley, I know, is extremely interested in long-term care facilities and childcare. It will have a direct impact on our schools. It will have a direct impact on our higher education. It will have a direct impact on what we can do in this committee for workforce development. And so we wanted to try to balance being substantial in getting that out, as well as balancing, but not just is kind of spending it now and paying for it later, but hopefully balancing out what that impact might be.
Can I just comment on that before you go to the next?
Yeah.
That's okay, Mr. Chair.
Senator Isaacson.
Thank you. So, and I hear that, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm like trying to understand and see the scope of it, right? My thought would be that when we look at keeping the economy going and providing for these, it has a double positive effect, because then it keeps the jobs there, which keeps the tax income coming, which keeps the economy strong, right? Which then means we're going to have the money down the road. But if we shortchange that now, it seems like that could trip up jobs down the road, cost the state more money in unemployment and other things, or whatever they are on, need help from the state, and doesn't help us in the long run. So for me, it seems like if we were going to go all in on something, this would be the thing to go all in on, because what that does is it guarantees, or at least tries to guarantee, the economy stays strong, which then gives us a strong economy going forward. But if we don't do that, and I don't know to the level to which we'll reach, if there's 100 million people, $100 million reach all those folks we need to reach. And if that's the case, then my question's been answered. But I think, God dang it, sorry, that would be the thing to think about, I guess. And so I'd be interested in knowing, maybe not to interrupt, Chair Pratt, or Senator Pratt, just how far it does go.
Sure. Well, the 100 million, as we've broken it out into 5 tiers, reaches over, I know it's over 8,200 businesses. I don't recall the exact number, that have been directly impacted both on the sales criteria and on the industry criteria. And certainly you can see the breakdown. We tried to work with Hospitality Minnesota and what we thought that might what might be meaningful, and we tried to come as close as we could. As far as the 100 million, we worked with the counties to say, and the counties, I appreciate their honesty in saying, look, we don't want to run a program if you're not going to give us enough money to be meaningful, to actually run a meaningful program. And that number was estimated, nothing less than about 60 or 80 million dollars. Well, we were able to come in with 100 million, hoping that we could subsidize what we couldn't cover in that first cut. I think we're going to have to get through the program to decide whether or not we put enough into it or too much into it. It's hard to say.
Senator Isaacson.
Yes. I think he had suggested somebody else might have more.
He suggested Commissioner Grove might be able to fill in some blanks on that question. Commissioner?
Sure, Mr. Chair, Senator Isaacson, it's a great question. And I think as Senator Pratt, myself, our colleagues walked through this, we very much thought of this as the gap funding. We know the federal government needs to act. When recessions hit, the stimulus that is truly needed comes from the federal government. So $215 million is a pretty extraordinarily large program, and also woefully inadequate to help an entire economy rebound through state dollars. So it is meant to be a gap, meant to do everything that it can. We want to limit the number of businesses and jobs that we lose. Just some context for you, the state of Michigan is working really hard to even just get a $100 million program to the legislature, and they haven't been able to do that so far, and they're far larger than we are, just as another example. So no one here is spiking the football and saying this package is going to take care of every business. There will be businesses who get these grants or payments who will also end up closing. That's an inevitability given the scope and scale of this virus and its impact on our state. But we hope that this amount can help and that we move it quickly so that they can help fast for these businesses and these workers. But it's a great question. There's no magic number. There's no question about that.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Isaacson.
So I think what I'm trying to drill down to here is better done in a conversation with just Senator Pratt or you, Steve, or Commissioner Grove. But when I think about there's this point at which the money begins to help, and then where does that sweet spot really hit where it has the biggest impact, which isn't then resulting in diminishing returns. And so my question would be, if that sweet spot is in the next 100 million, wouldn't it be prudent to to take a look at that, or is that sweet spot, like, is there no such thing as that kind of sweet spot? Maybe is what maybe the right question.
Commissioner?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Senator Isaac, the closest we got to trying to find out sweet spots is in the tranches in bucket one, the 10K, 15K, 25K, 35K, 45K. Those tranches were developed in conversations with Hospitality of Minnesota, with restaurant owners, with leaders in industry. They aren't perfect either, but we did ask, like, if we throw 25K at a 24-person limited service restaurant, will that help? And what we heard time and again is yes, that will legitimately help. Will it save every restaurant? No. But will it help? The feeling was yes. So the kind of the right altitude, I guess, is sort of the question you're asking. That felt right for those tranches. I'm sure we didn't get it perfect. But in terms of the overall package, I think the economy itself is almost too unpredictable to know if this is the right level of package to be the most efficient use of capital. But it's a great question, and I guess we will see. But I think the counties will have to think this through too as they construct their programs to make sure the grant amounts they give will be commensurate with the need. And that's why there's no cap. We debated, if you don't mind me saying, Senator Pratt, having caps for that county level. It was just a thoughtful debate with the numbers, but felt like, gosh, let's not leave a cap to give the counties some flexibility, again, to Matt's point earlier, that we hope will be useful. So it's a great question. And the models aren't perfect on it, but there's also the issue, to Senator Pratt's point, of just how much money we have to spend and what the future of the state's fiscal health looks like, and making sure we are set up to take care of other priorities too.
Thank you.
And that's all I have for members with hands up. So I'm going to turn it back over to Senator Pratt for any kind of closing comments or final comments you want to make on it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, for hopping on a Zoom hearing on such short notice. As you can tell, we're still working through some of the details in the language between the House and the Senate and the administration to make sure that it's exactly right for what we intended. I'm very proud of this bill. I think this is going to be an important bill for our local communities. A bill that matches and tries to distribute the funds in an equitable manner. About 52% of the funds are going to the metro area. That approximately matches about the population of the state. And so I believe this is a good balanced bill. I'll tell you, I've heard from my business owners, some of them near tears, who have already taken out a second mortgage on their home and are, at risk of financial ruin. And this is not, and many of these businesses that were impacted through the spring were hoping to break even by the end of the year. They didn't want to make any money. They just wanted to break even. And now they are almost certain to lose money. And we'll have to look at how that impacts their employees and their hiring. Again, I want to thank Commissioner Grove. A special thanks to Senator Champion, who kept a number of issues to the forefront as we walked through this. And then our colleagues in the House. This is a bipartisan, bicameral deal. That means, sometimes it means that you got a lot of what you wanted, but maybe there's a little bitter taste in your mouth. I think all sides can walk away with that. That's the definition of a true compromise. And let's remember, members, we'll be back in session here in a few weeks, and we'll be able to address some of these additional issues in the coming session. And so with that, I might just offer Senator Champion any closing comments that he has.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I do want to thank everyone who worked really hard on this bill, and the context has been absolutely right that there's always room for improvement, right? The other thing I don't want to get missed here is the fact that we've been working very hard, and we understand that there has to be a nexus between this business, small business package, and workers. We know that like business owners, the workers are suffering as well, and we want to make sure that what we do on next week is at least a messaged, comprehensive approach where we are looking at supporting small businesses, but also those workers who have been on the sidelines as well. And so that's with us expanding our unemployment or extending unemployment insurance. I know Commissioner Grove talked about this earlier. We know that there's going to be a large chunk of Minnesotans whose benefits are going to end by the end of the month. And it's just unnerving and unsettling. And I think we would do our great state a disservice if we don't make sure that as we put forth a comprehensive idea or a heartfelt idea for business owners, that if we don't make sure that the same happens for workers. The last thing that I'll say is one of the things that I talked a lot about and has been nonprofit art organizations in that county bucket. I wanted it to be a little more spelled out in order to make sure that counties did not forget about those arts organizations who don't pay sales tax, but yet their businesses are sales tax on tickets, and that their businesses have been hard hit because they haven't been able to do productions, they haven't been able to employ individuals, and in fact, even once there's this infusion of some revenue, we hope that happens, but counties have that discretion. But even once the restrictions are lifted, those entities are probably not going to get any production on a stage that helps all of us, including the ticket holders, as well as those people who are being ushers, and the list goes on, until at least another year. And so I just don't want that to get missed, because sometimes that gets missed. So thank you, Senator Pratt. Thank you to Commissioner Grove and Commissioner Doty and our House members, everyone in staff, and Craig Janicic, as well as Shamika and others who had to stay up late night along with all the Senator Pratt staff in order to make sure that we could do something. So thank you, Senator Pratt, for the opportunity to at least say something. Thank you again.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I look forward to bringing this to the floor on Monday.
Sounds good. We appreciate
let me also thank our partners, the counties, Hospitality Minnesota. We don't have the chamber here, but they were helpful. We've had a lot of conversations with the trades. We've really tried to touch all the stakeholders, and thank you all for your partnership through this. And a special thanks to our staff who have their families and somehow decide to work the crazy hours that those of us that were stupid enough to get election certificates, or not stupid, I shouldn't say that, but they're there with us every step of the way, and appreciate their time at DEED here in the Senate and at the House. So thank you.
I think you meant foolish.
Foolish. Thank you.
Foolish enough.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for the great discussion today. With that, this meeting. Oh, do you have another question, Senator Housley, or are you just waving by? Okay. With that, this concludes the meeting. The meeting is adjourned. We'll see you all at session on Monday.